welcome to episode 3 of That Grief Relief podcast. This week, my guest is... This will take some explaining. Are we ready? So episode 1 was Oliver Page, my half-brother, same mum, different dad, all dead. Episode 2, my big brother Russell, full brother, same mum, same dad, both dead. Episode 3, my stepbrother, Danny Bartlett. Danny Bartlett's mum is my stepmum. She is married, or was, to my dad, so is my dad's widower. Danny Bartlett's parents are both alive.
Yes, at the moment of recording, I both have still got both of my parents.
Congratulations. I don't know why you're here.
I'll get my coat.
Thanks so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
This is going to be a bit of a weird one because we have just sat here for about 20 minutes going, how do we approach all different things, considering Danny did just say, when did your dad die? My memory, I can't remember this and I can't remember that. And it is weird, isn't it, how not only, and it's got nothing to do with our age, yeah. Certainly not
my age,
yeah, but isn't it weird how you just forget in terms of time frame?
Well, I've been here in Dubai for almost 20 years now, and with listening to the previous podcast, I've been trying to remember, when did that happen? I don't remember when your mum died, because obviously I would have known. And
yeah,
I would have, so when did they go back home, and where was I living, and what was I doing? And I honestly don't remember it. And we, like you just say, we just had a couple of quick conversations before we started this. I honestly don't remember when your dad died. I guessed, 5-6 years? And
you guessed 5,
8?
6, yeah, it's 8 years, yeah.
I honestly don't remember, and I don't recall much about it, but in that brief chat we had, things were starting to, neurons were starting to fire a little again, connections were being made again, and I think certain parts of my mind palace was being opened up again.
My mind palace.
Well, the mind dungeon I have.
Do you?
I have a dungeon full
of
dirty, naughty things.
Okay, now we did actually speak about that as well beforehand. I just said to Danny, please don't swear. I don't want to have the explicit symbol on podcasts. And he was like, but you just told me to be natural. You want me to be natural? I said, yes, be natural.
With a filter.
Yeah. So literally just before I hit record, there was some words said.
I vented them all out. Well, I vented out a small, maybe 10% of my vocabulary of swear words.
I'm slightly concerned because you're on a podcast yourself.
Yep.
You're welcome to promote that if you want.
I will.
Go on then.
Later.
Oh, tease.
If they make it through to the end, they can find out what it is. If you bother to listen to the end, or just press the skip button, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Hey, do not do that. No. But imagine that, I better listen to all of this grief a bit so I can find out where I can hear about Danny. Right, okay, so your mind dungeon.
Yeah.
So, yes, we did touch on it, and there are certain things you do remember and don't remember, and it's a bit of a strange one because that's the first question I'm going to ask you is your relationship with my dad. So your mum met my dad when I was 15.
I'm glad you know this because I have no idea.
Oh, no, I remember. I remember it vividly because this is so weird. You know my memories are bizarre. Your mum was wearing this really nice kind of, you know, like the Pringle pattern, like the diamond pattern.
Yep.
She was wearing this really nice kind of cream, short sleeve, kind of little Pringle jumper.
I'm just pleased she was wearing something. My mother.
She might listen to this, you know.
She might. Like I said, I'm pleased she was weering something when you met her.
She was. Yes, she was. And I do remember that. And I remember thinking, gosh, she's so stylish. She's so cool.
I just got pictures of her running out the back door, holding her shoes in her hand, doing the run of shame. Who are you? I'm Tina. Hi, bye. Your dad's upstairs. He seems happy.
Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why? You didn't live with them. Oh, actually, you did live with them for a brief time. Don't do that.
Sorry, you were 15. Mum was dressed like a Pringle.
So that was in the mid-90s, right? So that's how long they've been together. And I remember because your mum threw me an amazing barbecue party for my 15th birthday. I had a Charlie's Angels cake. I was the bee's knees when I was 15.
Charlie's Angels, what, the original Charlie's Angels or the remake?
No, the original. And me and all my friends were posed in Charlie's Angels.
Wow,
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Anyway, so that's how long your mum and my dad have been together, and they only got married just before Dad passed away after he fell ill. But you didn't come along for quite some time. Like, I didn't meet you for a number of years.
How old were you when you met me then? If you were 15 when you met Mum?
So you've got an older brother, Shane, who's a few years older than you.
Still alive.
Do we have to clarify that every time?
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. Still alive. I met Shane first. And this is why, as well, which is quite strange, I still call you Uncle Dan, because I met Shane and Shane's son Anthony, and Anthony would talk about Uncle Dan, the elusive Uncle Dan. But I didn't meet you for another 2 years, so I probably was maybe even later, 17, 18, maybe, until I met you. Yep. And I was like, it's Uncle Dan. Yeah. And then there you were in all your glory.
Well, I kind of remember that.
And your bleached hair.
Yeah, I remember that was when my hair was short and bleached. I'd recently had it all shaved off.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it used to be maybe as long as yours
Mine,
is now.
Yeah.
And I remember that meeting. Couldn't tell you when it was. I just remember it was down the bottom of the garden.
At my dad's?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Couldn't tell you much more about that. That actual meeting, but yes, I do remember that happening. I think I came down didn't come down on the motorbike though, did I?
No.
I came down with Shane, perhaps.
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
I don't think you would have
but that would have made sense because Shane would have known where Mum and your dad lived at the time. I wouldn't have had a clue, so he would have driven down and yes, that makes sense.
In his Vauxhall Calibra SE2.
Oh, the low-slung yellow.
It was yellow.
Yeah.
I remember painting his brake calipers yellow because he was that cool.
Was that like as a prank or?
No. It was a would you believe, a style thing.
I'm not a car person. I wouldn't have a clue, but now that doesn't surprise me.
I think he had like TSW 5-spoke alloy wheels. Only because I had a Nova and that's all I ever wanted.
I don't know what your
I know.
you're speaking. TSW.
What car did you drive?
We're going before we digress too much away from the purpose of this.
This is my podcast. I will digress all I want.
Well, then I'm going to swear. No, I won't. It was a Vauxhall Nova. Remember the first car?
Yes.
And that ties into your dad because your dad was the one that got me that car.
No way.
Yeah, well, I think it was between Mum and Dad, but I think it was your dad. Definitely was going to be your dad that sourced it, went down there, checked it, drove it back, etc.
Was it orange? Like
it was a gold. Like, would you? Yeah, it wasn't burnt orange. It was that gold, metallic kind of look, and it had the should we say, not standard wheels. Do you remember?
I don't remember that at all.
Well, it was stolen and burnt out.
Oh.
About a year later.
From yours?
From my house where I was living at the time, yeah.
In Kent. How bizarre.
Sissinghurst.
Stolen
Stolen from the high street in Sissinghurst and found half a mile away in an orchard, burnt out.
Joyriders, probs.
Yeah. Are we past the statute of limitation? It wasn't me and it wasn't an insurance job.
No, I do know someone that did that.
What, burnt my car out?
No, took their car apart and buried it in Eastbourne for an insurance job.
That seems like a lot of work.
That's true.
There's a big grave you got to dig.
Yeah.
Keeping in the theme of the podcast.
Do you think he grieved his car?
I think he probably did. Maybe poured a drink onto it to say goodbye.
Just mind your foot because you're banging the table.
Oh, am I? Okay.
And then you'll bang the mic. We have, got to be.
Is that how kids speak? Or was that drop the mic?
No, that's drop the mic.
Okay.
It's very, very different. Okay, so can you tell me a bit more about like when you first met Dad? Did you come with any expectations? Had you met any of your mum's partners before? Was it because your mum and dad separated years ago when you were really young?
Yeah, I was about 5.
Okay,
I
fine.
think when my earliest memories of Mum and Dad not being together, I think I was about 5 or 6.
Okay.
And so in between that time, Mum did remarry. She remarried Brian.
Brian, who I worked for in the pub.
Yeah, and I had obviously met Brian quite a few times.
Yeah.
There was a caveat to that. I'll get to that in a second. Quite a few times over those years, stayed with them occasional weekends and holidays maybe. But I had no preconceptions of your dad. Mm-hmm. I had no idea of who he was or anything because at this stage, I hadn't seen my mum for years.
Okay.
So when mum, and I'm not going to get into the timeline because I'm only going to mess it up. I'm not going to have a clue. But basically, there was a long period of time where I didn't see mum.
Okay.
When mum and dad first broke up, there was like I'm going to say every other weekend. It could have been once a month, but at the time it felt like once every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Mum would come and collect Shane and I. We would go out for the night, maybe catch a movie, go to a Wimpy, because we'd have a burger. I remember Shane. See, these are the weird things I remember. Yeah. Shane would love a what's the banana? As I said, what's the banana?
Banana split. Banana boat.
Banana boat.
Yeah.
He would love a banana boat, and I would prefer the one that had the donut, the chocolate sundae thing that had a donut. See, I remember that stuff.
How weird.
And that would be, like I say, every second or third weekend.
Standard divorced parents procedure.
Yeah, and then there would be a birthday card, and there would be a Christmas card, and maybe, and they would have money in.
Yeah,
great, fantastic, because I wasn't going to see mum maybe on the birthday or Christmas. But I do remember that those visits started to dwindle.
Okay,
and they were less frequent. Mm-hmm. Then not happening at all.
Okay,
and then the birthday cards and Christmas cards would become less frequent, even less than once a year. Oh, if you get that. But it was.
Is that why you're so young?
Yeah, I only got one birthday card a year. Honestly, mother. But it went to none.
Okay.
And I know that upset my dad. Mm-hmm. I know that bothered my dad, but also know dad was very much didn't let that show to us. It's only as when it was all over, shall we say, that kind of period of time was over, that he would say, yeah, that used to bother me, but I never used to show you boys and tell you boys that bothered.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen mum for an awful long time, and there was a little bit of, there wasn't anger, there wasn't that grief about that. I think as a kid I dealt with it because I was the younger of the two. Shane's 5 years older than me. Okay. So for me, I'm not going to say it didn't bother me, but it didn't really register too much at the time. So what that meant was that, okay, I don't see my mum so much anymore, but I'll go out and play football and ride my BMX. It kind of just got on with things.
Mm. And were you looking at, sorry to interrupt, were you looking to Shane for how you should react?
Don't recall that at all. Possibly not, don't know. Because, Shane and I still live very different lives. And we went down different paths and we made different decisions, hence the mind dungeon. But there's, but I don't recall there being any of that at the time. Now, if I was to go back and look at my past self in a time machine and stuff, I could probably say, well, there's a key, there's an indicator, there's a challenge, there's a behaviour that was this, that, and the other. But anyway, to get back to what I was going to say was, I had no preconceptions of your dad. The meeting mum again was about meeting mum again. And she just happened to be with another guy, which was Steve, which was your dad. Yeah. And so that first meeting was more about how do I feel about seeing mum again? Because she hasn't been around for years.
So my dad was almost like the secondary factor.
Yeah, it was like, oh, well, yeah, okay, nice to meet you, but I'm still figuring out whether I want to see this person again, this person being mum. And so that was a strange meeting, I'm sure. I don't recall much about it, but I can pretty much guarantee that was weird. Awkward.
How did it happen? Who encouraged you to come round the house? Was it
Shane?
It was Shane.
It was my brother. He had made the decision. I don't know. I don't even recall this. You'd have to speak to Shane. Whether or not he had reached out to mum or mum had reached out to Shane. Okay. Now, here's what I would say. If mum reached out to Shane, I am pretty confident that was from your dad's urging. Your dad's coaching, your dad's pushing, your dad's idea. Your dad was never pushy in that sense, but he would certainly let you know how he felt about something without making it an issue.
And certainly in terms of family and
absolutely, 100%. Yeah, exactly. So I'm pretty confident that if what it was mum reaching out to Shane, that it was at your dad's urging, or certainly with your dad kind of, holding her hand and telling her it's for the best, and
because I don't want to put any ideas into anyone's mind, and obviously I speak to your mum all the time, but I'm wondering whether perhaps she was afraid to reach out to you guys and thinking, okay, well, they're not going to want to hear from me.
Yep. And that might upset her more. Exactly. And so she was trying to protect herself from more grief, more pain.
Because that's certainly the impression that I got when as I said, when I first met Shane and I'd heard about you, and Shane didn't come back into your mum's life and sort of into our lives easily, I'm sure. But I remember, I think he did it more maybe for his son because he was a dad to Anthony. But then I'm assuming that then he's sort of gone to you, and I'm sure that's the kind of idea I have in my mind, that my dad was very much saying, you know, your family, it doesn't matter, we need to kind of not brush it under the carpet, certainly address certain issues, and there's no need to go into all of that. But I have a memory, and I was going to say, tell me if this is wrong, but your memory's all over the place as well. I have a memory of after you had come round, you were leaving and my dad walked you out. Okay. And he you remember my dad did that thing where he would shake your hand and have his arm round you at the same time, kind of thing. Nope. And obviously he was a very tactile person, as you know, but I have this memory that he walked you out, and me being the nosy 17-year-old that I was at the spy hole, like looking out the door going, right, what's going on here, what's happening? And I just remember seeing I couldn't hear anything, but seeing almost quite a heartfelt conversation, almost my dad thanking you for coming round. And I don't know, again, I've totally made up in my mind.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that at all. However, I would say, knowing your dad, that was quite possibly true. I wouldn't know exactly how that conversation went, or even if I said much, and it was your dad talking and me listening. Which is also probably true. Yeah,
that's also true.
I don't recall that, but it sounds like it's something that definitely could have happened.
Do you remember then, and I'm assuming not, but if you can try, but do you remember what it was like leaving there? Do you remember having a conversation in the car with Shane or anything? Do you remember the next time you wanted to reach out and come round? Nothing like that?
Nothing at all. I just know that organically I did, or the relationship did get built again between my mum and I, and by default then with your dad, and then and Russell,
and then obviously we just became quite well, I mean, it's backwards, but quite a solid little family unit. Like, we would see each other, because although you live nearby, maybe 30-40 minutes away from us, so we would see you all quite often. And I think that obviously for Tina to then have a relationship with her grandson, Shane's son, back again.
Still alive,
yes. Again, it's a new family member we've introduced, and we have to confirm they're still alive. What about, you lived with us?
Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, I think you jumped.
Everyone lived with
you jumped a little bit there as far as the relationship with your dad goes, because there's something that your dad, I'll always remember him for, and always appreciated for. He was a driver for keeping the family in contact.
Yes, very much.
I say in contact. Keeping the family together is one thing, but keeping them in contact was something that he was huge. And I still to this day don't do it enough, but I do remember your dad was very much a driver behind that, making sure that I mean, you'll remember obviously, but you used to speak to him every day. You used to speak to him during the day, even though you live with him, and the same with Russell. And I, as an outsider on this, I'm looking and going, you're going to see him in like 3 hours. Why are you chatting to him so many times? I didn't get it, and I don't get it. And I think this comes back to the relationship that I did or didn't have with my mum.
Okay.
My dad brought myself and my brother up on his own. And if you think 70s and 80s, that in itself is quite unheard of, because that would have been naturally kids go with mum, regardless of whether that was the correct solution financially, emotionally or not. That's just what happened in the UK back then. That was the decision. So the fact that dad had custody in itself was a rarity, but he had to work hard for that. And so the things that my dad did to make sure that Shane and I were well looked after involved making sure he provided. So the work ethic comes from dad. The working for what you want and need comes from my dad, because we didn't have much, he didn't have a lot, and so if we wanted something we had to work for it. And so that comes from my dad. But the downside of that is he was always out working.
Right.
So he did a great job, and still to this day does a great job, because he does it with my nephew. Will always be there for things that were, let's say, important at the time. Like for me as a boy growing up, sports day.
Okay, yeah.
Cross country running. Yeah. Football matches and things like that, because I was a cross country runner at quite a high level and played football quite competitively as a kid too. Not like your brother, not like Russell. But Dad would always make the effort, to be there for those, and I really appreciated that. So that would be a Saturday morning or whatever.
Yeah.
But the other times, he would always be out of work before I went to school and would be home after I'd gone to bed.
Latchkey kid, as my mum would call it.
And my dad did remarry, and we had a stepmom. This isn't the format to go into that, obviously, or the podcast to go into that. But we didn't have a father figure around all the time.
Okay.
He was always there, and he did the important stuff. He put a roof over our head and food in our belly and was there for the important things. But what your dad did was, or what your dad provided that we didn't, not through any fault of my real dad, let's use that term, was that your dad was very much there to encourage the connection and staying in touch and the emotional stuff, like you just said, the tactile stuff. We didn't necessarily have that, and so as Shane and I grew up and we went our different paths, we've been certainly affected in how we have our relationships, particularly with the opposite sex.
Yeah, of course.
We've had our challenges, maintaining relationships, etc. But your dad was really good at trying to get the family to stay together and to contact, and used to upset him that we didn't call more often. Now, we would always used to have a running argument about, we'd always used to fight about that. It's like, well, it works both ways. Mum doesn't call us, we don't call that. And it's still going to this day, it's still going on. I had a WhatsApp chat with Mum 3 days ago because I sent a message 2 weeks ago checking in on her and she didn't reply. And then I sent a random one, so are you still alive, Mum? I said, yeah, alive and kicking. We had a brief chat. But
I could do with some more content.
Yeah, that's how we communicate. And I'm the same with my dad, and I'm the same with Shane, my real brother. Once every month, maybe, unless we need something. And I don't just mean need to borrow a fiver or a spoon, a cup of sugar. If we need something emotionally or physically, should we say, if there's some real issues, then everyone's still there. But we don't have that need to be in constant contact, constant reaching out. And your dad would encourage that because it's important, and I appreciate it, and it still is, and I totally get it. But to a point where it was so reversed for Shane and I, it used to be like, stop pushing this because we don't feel comfortable doing this, and we not only do we not feel comfortable with it, we don't see the need of it. In hindsight,
of course
we do, and we do appreciate it, but at the time it was, you need to take a step back. But one last thing, sorry Kate,
I was going to say,
you understood that, and this is one of the great things about him. He didn't push, he didn't argue. It was like, okay, that's how you feel about it, and that's it. And then that would be kind of like the end of the conversation. And I always respect him and appreciate that from him, because there's certain people that will push until such point that well, now you're just pushing me away. Yeah,
exactly. And it has the complete negative effect. What I was going to say was, it's also the fact that you and Shane weren't at a young, impressionable age at this point.
Nope.
So you are 7 years older than me. So yeah, you were mid-20s. Shane was late 20s, early 30s, if anything.
Now he's 50.
Don't wind him up.
Now he's
please
50.
Don't wind him up.
Still alive, but over 50.
Sibling rivalry is just wonderful, isn't it? There were two things I was going to say about that. So it's the fact that, yes, it wasn't as if you're kind of a teenager and kind of, I'm being forced to, I've got to ring my mum because her new fella has said I've got to. Yeah. It could have, exactly as you said, it could have had a very, very different effect. To be like, I'm an adult. Yeah. You don't get to tell me what to do. Yeah. But you're right in how he said it. And you use the word coaching and nurturing. And I think they're both really important words, whereby that's how Dad did it. It wasn't a force. I mean, he forced us to do other things. We had to clean the bathroom every Wednesday. That wasn't a nurturing experience. Yep. But
we're certainly not nature, is it?
No, that's true. And the other thing I was going to touch on as well was, you were saying about staying in contact and not. And this was before all of the social medias, although Dad was on Facebook, but certainly before WhatsApp. It wouldn't be text messages because I'm not spending 50p a text message. Yep. It was picking up the phone. Now, you know what I'm like on the phone. Backwards and forwards. So with Danny, backwards and forwards, I'll voice note or message or something, and he'll ring me, and I'm like, why are you ringing me? And he said, we could have just dealt with this. I'll be round at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. I'm like, you could have just voice noted me that, which is weird for the industry I'm in. I hate speaking on the phone. But with Shane, what's interesting as well is that I don't speak to Shane genuinely for months and months on end.
Yep.
But he's still my big brother, and I still, love him to bits. And last time I saw him was Christmas last year. Year before.
Oh, I can't tell you when you saw him.
I can't remember. That's really bad. Anyway, Christmas Day together, we had a lovely time.
You mean pre-apocalypse, obviously. Pre the current apocalypse that we live in.
Yeah, let's not even talk about that.
Yeah.
So then, skipping forward...
moved in.
Oh, yeah.
You touched on moved in.
Yeah, you did.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, or not make sure, but to understand that your dad created a very welcoming and environment.
If you cleaned the bathroom every Wednesday.
And didn't drive on the grass.
Oh my goodness.
But here you go. Here's the thing that your dad didn't understand. If you tell my brother and I, Shane, not to do something, then we're just going to push the envelope and go, oh, okay, you mean like this? You mean don't drive on the grass like this? Could have just not said anything, because we're adults. We know that there's a road and there's a grass. The car goes on the road. I wouldn't have even thought about driving on the grass. But clearly your dad grew up with your other brother, Russell, who can't drive, even though he can drive really well, drives like a... insert expletive right there, and so Shane and I come along and we know the road is for driving on and the grass is for playing football on or something else. But your dad was like, don't drive on the grass, don't drive on the grass. Well, of course not. Why would I? But now you've said that, knowing it's going to annoy you, and we really just want to annoy you, I'm just going to put the front wheel on the grass a little bit, especially when it's wet. And so
that's his favourite.
Yeah, exactly. So, but apart from that and cleaning the bath, your dad was very welcoming, because at the time was his home. Mum had moved in with him. Mum had moved in with you guys, not the other way around. They hadn't set up a new home somewhere together. This was your dad's house that he had invited this other woman to share his life with, and was happy to invite her rest of her family in, which was my brother and I, and obviously Shane's son. And so when it came to that point in my life where I needed somewhere to reset and reevaluate and figure out where my life was going to lead, it felt more natural to come and move in with you guys than it did to go back to live with my dad.
Okay.
Because at the time I knew that Dad was on his own, but I knew that I needed the support of, should we say, family around me 24/7. And because I built such a good relationship with you and Russell, as well as your dad and mum, my mum and I's relationship now was much, much better. That was the more sensible place to move into. It wasn't geography, it wasn't financial. It was, if I'm going to get through this current rough bit of my life, I need those people around. Russell and I share a love of football, etc., and music and movies and all the things that we still share, or we still have in common now. Yeah. And so that was much better. That meant that I could grieve over that particular loss at the time, much better. And your dad was never a second thought. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a maybe, could be. It was sure. Yeah. There's a spare room. Just make sure you clean the bathroom every Wednesday and don't drive on the grass.
Don't drive on the grass.
So that is again something that I'll always remember fondly of your dad, is that the house was a home for all of us, and it was regardless. Home. Yeah. Exactly.
And I don't remember how long you lived with us for, but
it was a year, just over a year.
Oh, really?
And 3 months. Yeah.
I didn't realise it was that long. Yeah. I remember breaking up with a boyfriend and coming into your bedroom, and I was sobbing my heart out, and you said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, such and such and I have just broken up, and you were consoling me, and I was beside myself, and you'd said something along the lines of, did you see it coming, or what did he say? And I said, no, I broke up with him. And you went, well, why are you so upset? I remember that vividly, because I was on my knees, sort of on the floor, like sobbing on the bed, and your whole demeanour, body language changed. You were just
Get
like,
out.
oh, yeah, literally.
Get out.
Why are you wasting my time?
Obviously, I'm still not emotionally fully there, but at the time I was clearly emotionally challenged.
No comment, Your Honour.
And so now I understand that a little bit more. So even though you may be the breaker or not the breakee, it still affects you emotionally. But at the time, it was like, well, then you should be happy to get out there and find another one.
It was so funny.
I don't recall that.
And was that the period of your life then? Did you move from there to Dubai?
Yes. Because that's where I was. I'd moved out of that situation I was in before, and was readdressing. I just got the job at the Wheeled Sports Centre, so I was commuting.
Shout out to the Wheeled Sports Centre in Cranbrook.
Is it even still there? I don't know. Is that alive? And here's how from all the things I remember and don't remember, the reason why I'm pretty confident about the timeline there is because I remember only, should we say, serving one winter of commuting.
Oh, right.
Up and down. And obviously that implies that it was only at least 1 year, at least, right? And then it wasn't that long after that I applied for, didn't know what I wanted to do, remember? So I applied for work abroad, and it led me here to Dubai. So it wasn't that long ago, but it was definitely there was the transition space.
I think it's important to add that, Danny, you're such a lone wolf. You're a nomad. And he flew the nest, and he, from small town or small village Kent to then Dubai, and then we all came to visit Danny, and one by one we all just moved to Dubai, and Danny's like, leave me alone.
I know what I'll do. Now my life has changed again. I'm going to get out of here. And then the apocalypse arrived in March of this year. Like, oh no, I'm not only am I stuck here, but I'm stuck here.
Yeah, even more so. I do remember you saying, well, if one more of you moves out, I don't, where am I going? I don't know what I'm doing. And it's also full circle now because you and Russell live together.
Yeah, we've had some changes, and now we're doing the same thing.
Ultimate bachelor pad, and especially with my nephews as well. Usually when I go around Russell and Danny's house, if my nephews are there, so Russell, Mason and Aston, the boys, they all practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Danny, your fitness, TRX, you can go into all of that, Zoo into, and I'll pop round there for whatever reason it may be. And I'm not a girly girl, but there'll be WWE on the telly or what's the Impractical Jokers, something like, and then some kind of wrestling match happening outside, be that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or a full-blown WWE match going outside. It's the chair! It's, yeah.
Although we should say, don't do this at home.
Don't do that at home.
Professionals only. Don't try this at home.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that a house full of women you're going to walk around and they're doing cross-stitch, but it's just the ultimate...
Or with their cats.
Hey.
Just saying.
Don't talk about my cat.
Boys' house has dogs.
Girls' house has cats. Right, stop it. We're moving on to...
Have we started the podcast yet? Because aren't we meant to be talking about grief?
I didn't even hit record.
Oh.
No, I did. So then let's fast forward.
Go.
Because we've spoken about the fact that... And it's no good thing, bad thing, nothing. It doesn't mean anything. You don't remember... where you were receiving the call that Dad had got cancer.
Absolutely not.
You don't remember any of that, and that's by the by. But you do remember, certainly now I've jogged your memory, but you do remember travelling home within that kind of 6-month period.
Yeah, I remember.
You were home for their wedding.
Sure, I was at some point. I had gone home. We did go back for the wedding,
yes.
or I was there for the wedding when that went. I don't remember when we got the news. You could tell me how it happened, but one of you maybe called me, maybe Mum did. I honestly have no recollection.
Wasn't me.
But yeah, it could have even been Shane. It could have been because he was doing the deed, because Mum was obviously dealing with other things. So I honestly don't remember, but I do remember coming back for the wedding. We spoke just before you pressed record about where the wedding reception was, and I vaguely remembered where the wake of your dad's funeral was. I guess we'll dive into that in a little bit. But I don't remember much about it. But I do remember going back. I do remember seeing your dad, obviously, which turned out to be the last time for me. And that's it. I couldn't tell you the conversations we had. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling at the time of any great import, other than sadness, a worry because he was sick at the time, and so we didn't really know what was going to happen.
Did you feel a sense of...
Well, we knew what was going to happen, but we didn't know what the timeline was and how that was going to look and feel and all that kind of stuff. So it was an odd place to be in.
Yeah, and I guess even more so for you because you were one step away.
Exactly, but that's why that's why it's such a... I'm kind of glad I don't have those memories, if I'm honest. Because you and Russell would have had to have lived through that a lot more and a lot closer to it. Because the only memories I have of your dad are good ones.
Right.
I only have fond memories of your dad. I don't. You and I were talking about some argument that had happened, not with your dad and I, but outside, secondary to this, and it had upset your dad. But I don't even remember that, because that would have been a negative thing. A, because I was having an argument with someone at the time, but B, it obviously had a negative impact on your dad at the time. But I don't remember any of that.
How
I just remember the fun stuff, and even the stuff that's not fun, should we say? It was just a little irritation. Like, why'd you got to have the TV so loud? I mean, really. But honestly, it's all just good stuff, and I'm kind of happy about that if I think back on it, because there's certain other times when, you know, the losses I do have, unfortunately, they're still fresh in my mind, and I've still got the negative picture in my mind, and I'm desperately trying to get rid of that. But with your dad, it's all just positive. So it doesn't help your podcast that I can't remember much in that sense, but for me, it's good, because all I've got is fond memories of your dad.
But that's the reason I wanted to do the podcast as well. And we even spoke about before you came on, because it was a little bit like, well, why are you coming on? But it's important because you are the fourth member of our family unit in Dubai. We speak about you, and I wanted to obviously bring you on the podcast. And it is a strange one, because, as you say, Oliver Russell and I have these very, very in-depth memories of because we lived it day to day.
Yep.
You mentioned that you remember seeing Dad looking very bloated. He looked very different on his wedding day.
That was because of the drugs, right? The steroid.
And he'd had the big.
And he had the op.
He'd had the big operation as well. So yeah, a lot of the drugs, but. That's you can't say fairer than that. You have these wonderful memories of my dad, and that's it.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the scar. Now I've got it in my head, but it's not a bad thing. But I'm just saying, now I'd forgotten about it. I just remember the slight bloated due to the steroids and things that he was on, but I don't remember that.
And it's difficult because he was so bloated on his wedding day. Obviously, the photographs of that.
We had to get another suit made, did we?
But it was such. As we touched on in episode 2 with Russell, we had an amazing summer. We had an amazing 6 months, and the day of the wedding was so much fun. And then you weren't there for the barbecue, were you? Oh, you were. Where Dad had announced it to all the neighbours.
No,
I don't think you were.
Dead air, bad for a podcast. No idea.
No, that's fine. So when Dad and Tina got married, we did it
at the wedding, or the night of the wedding, day before, or what?
I think it's the day after.
Well, so I would have been there. I wouldn't have let.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe we need to check some photos. So Dad and Tina were getting married in just the registry office. They just wanted to get married to that unity of love, I suppose, before knowing that Dad was going to ultimately pass away. And it was just family only. And I will explain that where we live, our community and my was very close knit. You know, your neighbours were very good friends for 30 years at a time, and Dad was really held in very high regard in the town. There's a context. There's a reason why I'm saying that. So we went to the registry, and it was just family and extremely close friends. And so no one knew, but we would all often have garden like barbecues, and all the neighbours would come round. It was great when you were in the band and you would come round and set up, and we'd have these amazing parties. So Dad had invited, and said, we're gonna have a barbecue. Everyone knew that Dad was ill, so it was very much a celebration of life. So come round, and Dad then announced to the neighbours, and I remember he pulled out the marriage certificate, and said that we'd got married, and it was a huge celebration. You must have been there.
I'm pretty sure I was. I just don't recall it.
This is
I was
so
very,
weird.
very drunk.
Yeah, you probably were.
Very drunk.
So that's fine. You have these amazing memories, and I think that's important, and all the nuances and little stories that you will go on to live to tell the tale and Dad's legacy. What about then other grief that you've experienced? Have you lost someone close to you? I wouldn't say closer than say Dad, but or a death that say has impacted you or stuck with you more, for want of a better word?
I'm getting close to 50 years old now, and all that means is that I've been around for a few years, and that does mean that the people that we know, the adults that we knew when we were kids, they're also getting older, and that includes our parents, as you well know, and so yes, there has been some losses. There's only really been one real close loss, but the others have been secondary family members and stuff. When I was a kid, I remember a friend of mine, my best friend at the time, a friend of ours, her brother died in a motorcycle accident, and I remember being around that grief quite extensively because
were you young at the time?
We were 17, 18 maybe, and so we had grown up with this boy as well. Maybe we were a little bit older because I think he must have been 16 or 17. So again, memory's a bit sketchy on this, but ultimately we were friends with his sister, but growing up with his sister we knew her brother.
Okay.
And so we knew him, and when he died in that motorcycle accident, we were there at the funeral and stuff, and that was my first ever loss, because our family, my side of the family, is quite convoluted, and though there apparently were losses, I have no idea who they were and when that happened, and was not close to them at all. And then over the years there's only been, how would you say it, like secondary connections.
I know what you mean.
That I'm aware of. Sad for the person that I know that they've lost someone that they care about, whether it's parents or siblings of theirs. But your dad was the first one that was close to home.
A direct impact.
Yeah, and even though it was like you just said, like on the periphery of the family, that was the direct impact one. But, and again, that's why the grief was weird for your dad in that sense, because it was more about how you guys are dealing with it and how mum is dealing with it, rather than whether or not I'm really upset by it or not.
No.
So of course I was. It was a miserable time, but because of being out of it a little bit, it was more like, well, how's Katie? Or how's Russell? Mum, are you all right? What can we do? And that's the only time since I've lived here where it is a bit of a pain to live 6,000 miles away, or
something like that.
However many miles away we live. It's only a flight. It's 10 hours maximum, door to door, you could argue. But still, you're not there physically. And so my brother Shane had to pick up quite a bit of that slack as far as mum was concerned, because he was still back in the UK, or is in the UK. It was a funny one. It was more about how you guys are dealing with it, and so the grief was sadness for you and sadness for mum, and a little bit less extent sadness for me, because I had that great memories of your dad, and luckily for me I didn't have to go through what you guys had to go through, or certainly what mum had to go through day to day, losing her life partner, etc. So, and
you've already touched on it, your emotional disconnect in general throughout life. How then do you, or did you cope with let me try and explain myself a little bit more. Your emotional disconnect, I'm very different to you. So if I see someone upset or grieving, my initial response is to make sure they're okay and care for them, be that in a hug or a text or whatever. How did you know how to were you a bit like, oh, I don't really know what to do here? And is it just...
When you lost your dad?
Yeah, when you're saying about you were concerned about your mum and myself and Russell.
Yeah.
How did you have to force yourself to try and care for us and make sure we were okay?
No, I don't recall that process going on. I don't recall what thought process was going on, but I do know, and this has certainly changed or grown over the years. It's not changed, it's improved over the years and grown over the years, is, okay, look, I have this, like you say, emotional disconnect thing, challenge, issue. But what that does is it means that I get to look at things in a bit more practical sense and pragmatic and go, okay, what do you need? Do you need X, Y, Z? Let's just pick a random. Do you need me to do some shopping for you? Is there something that you need? Do you need me to drive you to the airport? Do you need me to pick up something, do something practical that's going to make your dealing with it just a little bit easier, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. And that in itself helps me to, okay, well, I'm doing something, so I'm okay. I'm doing something. I've got get my hands dirty. I can do something. But ultimately, it makes me feel better because, okay, it may not seem like much, but the fact that there's now food in your fridge, for example, or you don't have to worry about getting your car renewed or whatever it was practically that I could do helps. That makes me feel better, for want of a better word, and that also helps me deal with it too.
And that must have been difficult, as you say, being away from your mum, and ultimately going back to what I was saying about the neighbourhood community. Tina now lives on her own, and sorry to say this, she's 70, just recently turned 70, and it worries me all the time, and I'm sure it worries you all the time, but she's got an amazing network and community all around her. I mean, even Tommy the postman checks in on her every day. So that's the kind of small town. So that must have been difficult for you because
I couldn't do anything. So
you couldn't offer anything emotional
or practical.
Yeah.
So that's where I lent on Shane a little bit, because he's like, okay, you really don't need to do anything. It's okay. So he was reassuring me that he's doing everything that can be done and there's no need for me to come back.
Right.
Because that was obviously the first conversation.
Yeah.
Is, do you need me to come home? Because I can. I've always in a position with work being freelance that I can drop anything pretty much at a whim and just go back. And I was very, do you need me to do it?
Pre-apocalypse.
Pre-apocalypse, yeah. Do you need me to do that? And he would convince me, no, it's okay. You can't do anything more than you're doing there. And it would be silly to then add the extra stress on everybody. So you don't need to. So Shane picked up the slack as far as that was concerned, as far as looking after mum was concerned during that time. And he was good at making sure I'm still okay with that, and because obviously I would check in and everything's still okay, for want of a better word, and he would reassure me on that. So that was okay. That was manageable.
Because it is a tough one, and again, one of the reasons I did the podcast was because, yes, whilst me and you and our family deal with grief in a certain way, sometimes there are people, and people have actually reached out already who have listened to the podcast who haven't experienced grief themselves, but know people that have and don't really know how to deal with that. My only piece of advice, and I'm sure you've got advice as well, but my only piece of advice is to just kind of be there for what, and that doesn't have to be physically.
Yep.
And that doesn't even have to involve texting them to say, how are you? It could be send them a meme, send them something off Instagram. It's just a little trigger to sort of say, I'm thinking about you today, and let them know that, exactly as you say, if you need me to pick up to
pack a bag, I can be on the plane.
I was going to say tea bags for some reason. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why. It was just that one thing.
It's an English thing. Do you need to? Have you got all right for tea?
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Get some tea and milk.
Somebody dies, you stub your toe. World War II. Have a cup of tea.
Have a cup of tea or coffee.
You're a coffee person.
I'm a coffee person. You know what? I just as you were sitting there. Talking, and I'm not listening to you at all. Paying any attention to you. My mind's on when's my next coffee. But I'm thinking, a lot of I was actually just thinking back to the funeral, and the wake,
yes,
and everything around that, including, and like you were just saying about the barbecue, the celebration of his life and the impact he's made, and how he made everyone feel at home, family or not. When you step foot in that door, you were a member. You were in your home. You pretty much, you're safe here. You're happy here. Relax. A lot of that is or comes through in how we dealt with it afterwards.
Okay.
Because I remember you and Russell talking about on the last podcast about where your dad didn't tell you about it until he'd done all the tests and found out and stuff. And that could be initially annoying. But at the same time, it made so much sense because now you got questions and I can answer them rather than going, don't know. So then we end the phone call an hour later and you don't know anything and you're just stressing out that night going, well, when's he going to get this test and when's he... It could give you all the answers. Now, they're not the answers you maybe wanted to hear, but they're the answers you needed to hear and they were the truthful answers. And now you can go, well, okay, well, I'm not going to sleep, but now I have the answers. And the same thing happens with my dad now and with mum.
Okay.
I check in on them and make sure everything's okay. I recently, last year, whatever it was, found out Dad was going into hospital to have some operation and stuff. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Why am I only just hearing about this now? And it was the same response. And Shane was the same. He said, well, this is why, and this is why we've only just found out. You don't need to worry. There's nothing to worry about. We've done all this. This is X, Y, Z. You're okay. So I could put the phone down and go, well, that was annoying. I've only just found out, but I'm actually okay. Because he's okay.
Yeah.
I know he's going into hospital, so in 2 days' time I called and everything was okay. And that's when we did have the communication. Dad's out of hospital. His current wife, like to be another one, but his wife, his current wife, could be 3 or 4 more before the end. His current wife, Jill, was really good at keeping us up to date. So your dad's out of hospital, everything's fine. Oh, great. Well, then get him to call me when he gets home.
Yeah.
And he was coming home a couple of days later. That ultimately made that whole loss for me that much better because I know your dad wouldn't want people to be upset.
No.
your dad would want people to have a party and to joke and laugh and remember the fun stuff because, and as an atheist as well, I know that's the end. There is no, I don't know.
Sure.
I'm pretty confident based on current evidence that there is nothing after that. So this life we've got is the only one, and your dad did a really good job of enjoying the one he's got.
Absolutely.
Or one he had, sorry. And making sure that we enjoy the one we've got.
Yes.
And so when that wake and everything, I remember the jokes and the laughter and stuff, and this is completely normal. This doesn't feel like, I feel awkward, shouldn't make a joke. No. Your dad would be annoyed if we weren't enjoying that. He would like, why are you all, he would say, what's going on? Someone died.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, he would want to see everybody smiling and happy.
Yeah.
Of course he didn't want to go, but at the end of the day, that's how I remember it, and that's how I will try to always remember it, is that was some fun. We always had fun. It was always happy and comfortable and fun and enjoyable and loved, and there was no issues there at all, or certainly none that in the hindsight are worth worrying about now.
Exactly, because that's what I was going to say. He was a strict parent. Yep. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. I wasn't allowed to have boys as friends and those kind of things. But that
special friends.
Are
you allowed special friends now?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But as you say, that's all pretty standard parenting things, and very fortunate. Gosh, I'm very fortunate for the upbringing I had, and for you to say these things for almost the short period of time that you lived with him and lived your life with him. It's he did a huge impact. Did you totally change the subject? Did you ever meet my mum?
No. Oh, unless she came down to the house at some point.
Doubtful.
Exactly.
Yeah, very doubtful. So,
I mean, I know you're videoing this, but if you're listening to the podcast, we're both shaking our heads quite roughly. No, unlikely.
Definitely not.
No, not at all.
Yes, you did. At Russell's wedding.
Yeah, I don't remember that. You might well be at you. Well, no, because
You definitely would have.
Did she come here? Because they got married here, right?
Yes, of course.
James Bond theme.
Yes.
So I'm slowly starting because I was very, very drunk.
When aren't you? Not right now. It's 11:20 on a Tuesday.
But it's beer o'clock somewhere.
Don't put it past me.
So okay, yes, I probably did, but apologies.
Not to any. Recall. Yeah, and I don't think. I don't think Mum would have been in a rush to meet her ex-husband's
new family,
whatever. Okay, fine. I don't even know why I brought that up.
Nope.
I wanted to read an email that we'd received anonymously and get your thoughts on it, if you don't mind.
Okay.
She says it's really far away, and I haven't really zoomed it in. Hold on. There we go. Okay, it said. Hi Katie, I just wanted to say what a brilliant project I think this is. So little is said about death and the unfilled spaces it leaves behind. Losing someone is one of the most transformative experiences in your life, but for some reason you don't get to talk about it afterwards, like you would talk about having a baby or getting married or having a major operation, which I think is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. You're really scared about it. She goes on to say, my mum, uncle and grandmother all died suddenly last year, and it took me a long time to get round to doing it, i.e. the idea of listening to other people talk about death horrified me to begin with. But listening to podcasts like yours and Griefcast really helped me recognise a lot of feelings I had and helped me think more about ideas I've been putting aside. It also helped me see that talking about it should be normal. They were amazing people, so why do we have to pretend they didn't exist at all? Anyway, this message wasn't supposed to turn into therapy for me. The world needs a few more open places to talk about death in the weirdly nicest and funniest way possible.
Thank you, anonymous person.
I just think I like that, and I don't read out these emails to give myself a pat on the back, and some of the messages and the reviews and such from people I don't know and from family and friends have been wonderful. I didn't realise quite how much of a chord it would strike with people. Mm-hmm. It's a very strange one. I'm not doing it. I didn't do it for me, and there are more guests that I'm going to be getting on the show. It's not just about me and my family and things like that, but it is certainly
finding a way to have finding a way to have a positive impact on other people in this life is probably the best thing that any human can do.
Yeah.
And as we touched on, as an atheist, but as a humanist, that's the best thing you can do. We're not here for a long time. You're only here the once. So
here for a good time.
If you're going to, enjoy your life, then understand that your enjoyment comes from the people around you being happy and safe as well, because it affects your enjoyment. We're in this together. And so that's why doing bad things is not a good idea, because it does affect you.
Yeah.
And so anything that allows people to feel better is the right way of doing it. We're not therapists. You're doing this to chat, and if that's helped this I apologize, a lady or gentleman, anonymous, whoever it was, if it helps this person and other people, fantastic. If it doesn't, then that's okay, but I hope they find something that does help them. Like if that's talking about death in a matter-of-fact way with jokes and stuff upsets you, our goal is not to offend you. You can always turn off, but I do hope you find something that does make you feel better.
There are other podcasts available.
Yes, that may include swear words. So at the end of the day, we deal with grief differently. Yes. And I know you and Russell touched on this. I didn't listen to the one with you and Oliver, but I did listen to the one with you and Russell. And the way we deal with it may not be how other people deal with it. And that's okay, but understand, that's okay.
Yeah.
Just you can't be upset by that. We're joking about it because we knew Steve. You knew him a little bit better than I did. We knew him, and this is exactly what he would expect and want. Yes, there was tears shed, etc. But the fact that we can joke about it, that's how we cope with grief. Now, with my own personal deep loss, I cope with it differently, and the jokes about it wouldn't be welcome for me based on that time, because it was just me on my own. But I had other ways of dealing with it, and that was physical exercise and movement, physical challenge that pushes you to the point of being very, very physically uncomfortable, forces emotional release from the body, and that came out in sweat, but in tears. So I would be pushing through something incredibly physically demanding, knowing that physical release also helped the emotional release. And so there'll be times when I'll be doing certain exercises that were demanding, and you've done a few of them, but for a long period of time, and I would keep doing them even though it hurt like hell, but at the same time those emotions were coming out physically and emotionally. Physically they were coming out in the form of tears, and yells and screams and grunts and groans and cries and anger, but it came out a lot quicker. Right. It didn't drag on for weeks, months, years or whatever. It was, well, I say weeks, it was only weeks and no more than that. And so everyone finds a different way. So my point is, everyone finds a different way to deal with grief. If listening to this is helping you, then fantastic. Then carry on listening, and hopefully you'll find value in this one and Katie's future ones. And the same for you, Katie. Keep doing it. If people, it's being positive impact. That's ultimately what we leave.
Yeah.
When we leave, it's the impact that the impact you've made on people's lives. And your dad made a huge positive impact on a lot of people's lives. I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that would say a bad word about your dad that wasn't in jest.
No.
And so that's the impact. So why wouldn't you want to celebrate that and joke about that and have fun about that and remember that? Because that's important. And I would hope that everybody tries to think of that as they lead the life they've got. What impact you've made on other people, not how much money you made, not what building you built, because that will fall down, not what car you've left to someone, but the impact you've made on them emotionally, and if that passes on. So we've learned now lessons, emotional lessons, that we pass on to nephews in our case, and hopefully that will carry on down their timeline, and a lot of it is down to your dad.
And what
and so, so deal with grief however you want, but the positive impact your dad made is fantastic on everybody that he ever met.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a very strange situation in the small town that we lived in, whereby we would find ourselves consoling other people.
Yeah.
Your mum, the amount of times I'd come home and hear your mum on the phone and, I know, he was wonderful. And I'm like, get off the phone. You're supposed to be going through this grieving process yourself. But
I have no doubt that helped mum, though.
For sure.
I have no doubt that her helping others was helping her.
That was her nature.
There you go. And again, that's a positive side to it.
Always.
So absolutely, that's odd for a lot of people. But for us, that would be like you're saying. I'm like, that doesn't seem odd at all.
No.
That doesn't surprise me.
How funny.
But for other people listening, that's really.
And that's another thing that I want to do in each episode is recommend another Instagram account or a podcast that either I've liked or has been recommended to me, that just kind of is nice and helps you kind of through the day. Last week was Grief Hungry. You didn't hear that bit yet because I know you haven't finished episode 2. It's taken you about 4 weeks to listen to it, but that's fine. I won't take it personally. This episode's
don't care.
Instagram account is at Self-Care Spotlight. It's run by a lady called Steph. Again, I don't know these people, but Steph started this account back in July, and it's just doodles with kind of inspirational quotes, but not ones. Sometimes I look at these inspirational quotes, I'm like, whatever. But I like them. They're fun. She said that she gets inspiration for these quotes and doodles, and she doodles them herself. That's what I like about it. From things that have happened throughout the day, or from her followers or people that have messaged her. She experiences panic attacks and anxiety herself, and she did it as a coping mechanism. And she has said that the account for her has just been an amazing way of speaking to other people in the community, if you will, and speaking openly about mental health, and it's helped her, and she hopes it helps other people. So go and check it out at Self-Care Spotlight on Instagram, and go and give Steph a little follow. That's it. I think I do have to say, you know what to say on podcasts. You still haven't spoken about it, but you have to say click like and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and write a review on Apple Podcasts. I do like the reviews on Apple Podcasts.
Do we want a 5-star rating or maybe
I would like
4.5?
No,
because don't you take away the outliers, the ones
no,
and 5s?
I want 5 stars only.
Definitely click like and subscribe.
What is your podcast, Danny?
Okay, well, I'm currently working on a series of podcasts, but with LRM Online, which is Movie Geeks Comics TV shows website. And the actual podcasts are quite a few, but the one that I am weekly presenter on is Breaking Geek. Breaking Geek, the radio podcast. Breaking Geek Radio, the podcast. BGRTP.
LRM is LRM Online.
If you go there, you'll find it, and it's all on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc.
And it is really, I mean, when he says geeks, he's not joking, by the way. This is everything Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, nerds, geeks, nerds.
Hold on, you got quick Google on Gurks and needs. Nerds and geeks. We are definitely geeks, not nerds.
Oh, okay, you're geeks, not nerds.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, we're not going to go into it here.
I've just asked you.
Well, let's say nerd is someone that knows all the gubbins on the inside of a computer and how each of those things works, and a geek would be someone that likes playing games on the computer.
What about Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, we like playing those games. We don't care how the plastic is molded and how the plastic is made.
Oh, okay. That's a really great way
That's
of
just a quick way of doing it. So,
all right, well, LRM Online, if you indeed are a geek and want to hear this lot talk absolute nonsense about geek
warning,
stuff.
Explicit.
Oh, yeah, very explicit.
There will be swear words.
By the way.
Yeah.
Danny Bartlett, thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie Overy.
And I will speak to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.